Our speaker today is James from Maui, Hawaii, and he will be speaking for 45 minutes on using recovery tool to love your life. His home group is the Spinners in Kapalua group. Welcome, James.
Aloha. I'm James Q. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be able to be of service, and I appreciate the opportunity. And congratulations to all of you who are new in the program and are celebrating milestones. Today's message for me is how to use the tools of recovery to love your life, which is something that I've gratefully been able to do in my life. I got sober January 15th, 1982. And I've been able to maintain my sobriety since. I wanted to quickly qualify before I got into this. I got sober at 20 years old. I started drinking and using when I was around 15 years old. A lot of what I learned about alcohol and drugs was from my father. He was also an alcoholic addict. And it was a rocky road for those 5 years of my life. My active using and drinking was difficult for me, but I do want to say that it was the solution to the emotional problems that I was suffering from. I came from a dysfunctional situation in my family. There was a lot of trauma. There was a lot of abuse. And there was a lot of difficult emotional feelings for a child to go through. I didn't like myself. I didn't like the world. And the use of, liquid or solid alcohol numbed the feelings that I was going through. As a young child, I remember always wanting to be happy. That was very, very important to me. Enjoying life, playing, having fun. And by the time I was 15, it wasn't like that for me. And so alcohol and drugs were reprieves for me to deal with my feelings. And they worked. They helped me escape from the drama and the trauma that I was going through. And I, of course, got worse as time progressed and, went to jail and went to mental hospitals and suffered a lot and caused a lot of suffering in my life. But by the time I was 20 years old, I had been through the ringer and I had made a decision that I didn't want to drink or use anymore. I had been to a couple of Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. It wasn't for me. I essentially white-knuckled it and stayed sober for 7 years until I was 27 years old. By then, my life had improved tremendously, just not drinking and using. I got out of the life. I went to community college. I ended up going to a prestigious university. I did very well. I got a job at a Fortune 500 company. I was wearing a three-piece suit, driving a fancy car. I had a beautiful girlfriend, got a condo, and essentially had everything that you could want in life on the outside. The problem was emotionally, I was still the suffering 15-year-old that used alcohol and drugs to numb the feelings out, but I had nothing to numb the feelings anymore. So at 27, I found myself at the top of 3rd Street Promenade parking lot, very, very top floor, on the wrong side of the guide wires, looking down into the alley and trying to have the courage to jump, even though everything on the outside looked amazing. On the inside, I was dying. And Coincidentally, around that same time, my older brother and his girlfriend overdosed on heroin. She died. I found him in San Francisco. I thought he was dead. He wasn't. He was barely alive. Got him to a hospital. He was in Culver City at a hospital. I visited that hospital to support him. I went to my third Alcoholics Anonymous meeting at that hospital. I drove up in my Mercedes in my three-piece suit. I came in to be supportive. I was in a circle with a bunch of patients at the hospital and a nurse. And that nurse went around the room. It was my turn to share. I started sharing about how great my life was and all the things that I had. And I had been 7 years sober. And he interrupted me and said, "Excuse me, can I ask you a question?" And I had been to 2 AA meetings and they didn't really interrupt you typically in an AA meeting. But I thought at a hospital it might be different. And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Can you point out the person you think is the sickest person in the room?" And I thought to myself, that doesn't sound right. So I said, "I can, but that wouldn't be very nice." He said, no, please. And so I pointed to one of the patients that was drooling and not doing well and shaking. And he said, "I have to tell you something. I've been around this program over 20 years, and I don't think I've been in the presence of somebody who is really so sick as you." Now, I didn't think I was very sick in my three-piece suit and my Mercedes and my fancy job and condo and girlfriend. But I had just been on the wrong side of those guide wires. But nobody knew. And he said, I didn't say anything. And he looked at me and he said, "How bad is it in there? James, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "How bad is it inside of that head of yours right now? It feels bad over here. How bad is it?" And instead of answering him, I just started crying. I broke down and started crying. And he said, "It doesn't have to be like this. It doesn't have to feel like this. You can have a different life. Come into these rooms and listen for the similarities, not the differences. Stay. Life can change." So after that meeting, I went to another meeting the next day, begrudgingly, and life did change. I lost the car. Mercedes got hit by an uninsured motorist. I continued making payments on that car for 3 years without owning it. I lost the girlfriend. I lost the condo. I sold the condo, but I didn't read the fine printing, and the person that I was making payments to was able to assume the escrow and take the condo away from me. And eventually I lost the job. And somebody in the meetings said to me, "That's great news. You get to start the foundation from scratch. You get to build your foundation from the bottom up, on integrity and honesty and humility." And, I didn't really see it that way, but the truth of the matter is it was that way. And I rebuilt my life in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I thought I was doing pretty well. I ended up, moving forward with my life and having kids, getting married, and having a good life, doing well financially, starting a business. And I was married to my second wife, and I had 20 years of sobriety, 13 years in Alcoholics Anonymous. And my wife was in Al-Anon, and we got into an argument. And she came up to me and she looked at me and she said, "James, maybe you should just work a program. Have you ever thought about working a program?" And I looked at her and said, "Work a program? I'm 20 years sober. I'm an old timer. She said, yeah, I know. That's why I think it might be a good idea for you to work a program. And I said, I work a program. I work a great program. I don't know what you're talking about. She said, oh, really, James? What's that program look like? And I said, my program? Well, I'll tell you what my program looks like. I don't have to tell you what my program looks like because you're taking my inventory. And she looked at me and she said, yeah, that's pretty much what I figured your program was. And she walked out of the room. It's a bummer to be 20 years sober and not be working a program. It's a bummer. What's almost worse is to be 20 years sober in AA, sponsoring a bunch of people, praying every morning, you going to tons of meetings, being of service, and not knowing how to work a program. It's crazy. Because when you're new, you come in and you work a program by doing the steps, getting a sponsor, they carry, take you, they clap, you get the chips, woo, I'm working a program. And then once you get through all the steps and the sponsor and you're sponsoring people, no one really tells you how to work a daily program after that. You did the steps, you sponsor people, you're of service, you pray, meditate, maybe, how do you work a program? So I was very upset with my wife, and I decided that she would never be able to tell me that again. And I was going to be the best program worker that ever existed, better than Bill or Bob, better than anybody on the face of the planet. I'd be the king of working the program, and she would have to bow down to me and say, my husband is the greatest program worker that ever existed. But in order to do that, I had to figure out how to work a program, and it wasn't just talking to my sponsor at the time. I had to really figure out how to do this daily deal. And in order to do that, I started going to meetings with a notepad, and I started taking notes and listening to old timers that seemed to have what I wanted. Now, if you remember at the beginning of my talk, I talked about how I really wanted to be happy as a child. Well, I really wanted to be happy as a grown-up too. I really wanted to feel good. That's why I drank and used. I wanted to feel good. I want to be happy. I want to enjoy my life. I want to love my life. I want to feel wonderful. In the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I want to really love my life. And so I started trying to listen to people who seemed like they were enjoying their life in recovery and they had a lot of time. And I would go up to people after the meeting that I heard and say, hey, can I ask you a couple of questions? And I'd see my notebook and say, well, what are you writing now? I said, well, I'm trying to figure out how to work a program and really, really enjoy my life. And they're like, well, how long do you have sober? And I said, 20 years. And they're like, okay, Sonny, let me tell you what I do, and I started writing down things that people did. And, the program says you take what you like and leave the rest. And I started putting together a program of action that I could work on a daily basis that would allow me not only to be sober, but to love my life, to be happy, joyous, free, to have those promises, to be rocketed into the fourth dimension, have a life beyond my wildest dreams, but not just periodically be rocketed into the fourth dimension, not just love my life beyond my wildest dreams every once in a while, but to have it all the time. How do I love life all the time, no matter what? And so I put together this program for myself with all these tools of recovery that allow me to do that. And today I love my life beyond my wildest dreams. And I love my life all the time. I might not love everything that happens to me because we do have difficulties in life. But I've learned to embrace those. And here are the tools of recovery that I use to do that. The first tool that I use is meetings. Remember when I left that one meeting and I felt that he was the first person that could see what was really going on inside of me? I realized that without having gone to that meeting, nobody would ever really have discovered what was happening inside of me. And I may have had the courage to jump the next time I got up to that 3rd Street Promenade parking lot. So I was grateful for the meeting, and I kept coming to meetings. When I went to meetings in the beginning, I got there right when they started and I left before they held hands. I didn't like that holding hands stuff. I didn't like that prayer stuff. I certainly wasn't going to read the big book or do any of that stuff, but I was going to come to these meetings. And eventually I came to the meetings a little bit before and got a cup of coffee. Sometimes somebody would talk to me, which would be really uncomfortable, but I would deal with it. And eventually I stayed when they held hands. I wouldn't hold hands with them and I wouldn't say the prayer, but eventually I did hold hands. And eventually I actually said the prayer. And the one thing that I've done correctly all these years, or the way you're supposed to do it, is I've kept coming back. So the meetings are foundational for me. And in the meetings, we find fellowship. It's not just coming to the meetings, but it's hearing what people have to share, their experience, strength, and hope. And in the beginning of the meetings, I was judgmental. And, I would judge people and I would have opinions, and it would be hard for me to listen to certain people if they were different than me, or, I didn't listen with an open mind. Contempt prior to investigation. Oh yeah. In the beginning, I had a lot of that, but I realized that experience, strength, and hope that I received from that nurse in that hospital saved me. So I started listening to others, and that fellowship is foundation. And obviously step work was not easy for me. It was not until I was 10 years sober, 3 years in AA, that I actually started working the steps. And it was an interesting process. I didn't have a sponsor at that time because I didn't want anybody telling me what to do. But someone came up to me, a guy named Mike came up to me and he said, "Hey man, would you be my sponsor?" And I said, "Dude, I don't have a sponsor myself." And he said, "Well, that's cool, man. You take me through the steps." And I said, "Dude, I've never been through the steps." And he said, "Well, that's cool. We'll read the big book." And I go, "Oh, I've never read the big book." He said, "Man, you got 10 years sober and you never, I said, "No." And he goes, "We'll read it together, man. We'll read it together and we'll do the steps together." And I'm like, okay, I guess we could do that. And that was my first experience reading the big book and doing the steps with my sponsee. And over the years, I've done the steps many times, maybe not hundreds of times, but probably close. I've done the steps in many, many different fashions. I've done the steps out of the big book. I've done other types of steps with worksheets. I've done a gentle path through recovery. Many of the books that I've bought have ways to work the steps. I've done the steps in different programs. I live my life doing the steps. I'm always doing the steps now. At any time, any year, if somebody comes up to me and says, what step you're on, I can tell them what step I'm working on because I'm doing steps all the time. I'm usually in some form or fashion of working through some kind of a step program. So steps are really, really important to me. Service work. The first job that I had as service work was at the Clare Foundation, picking up butts outside of the meeting. I'm an ex-cigarette smoker. I used to smoke 3 packs a day. I quit cigarettes before I quit alcohol and drugs. I don't like cigarettes at all. I don't like the smell of them. I don't like being around them. But my first job was picking up cigarette butts, which, by the way, are pretty stinky. And they didn't have anything for you to pick them up with except your fingers. So, I'd pick it and I'd have to wash my hands really diligently. My second job was setting up chairs. I like that job. Not many people talk to you. You just set up the chairs. You feel like a sense of completion. I had the job once of doing coffee, and a guy came up to me. He said, "Hey, are you the coffee maker?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Your coffee tastes like shit, man. It's way too weak." I was like, geez. So the next time I went to that meeting, I made it a lot stronger. And some guy came up to me and said, "Man, you're putting way too much coffee in that, in the coffee. If you need to cool it with the," and then I made an announcement when they said, does anyone have any other AA announcement? I said, the coffee position is open. And someone took it. I was a treasurer at a meeting, and I was in charge of collecting the $2 or $3 or $4 at the end of this beach meeting. And I had collected the money and put it in the bank like I was supposed to. And this one guy at the meeting kept saying, how much money do we have? And I said, well, we have $3 more than we had last week, $103 now. And he was very, very upset at me for not making announcements there, but we only collected a few dollars. And eventually I said to him, hey man, you seem really upset about the treasury thing. Do you want to take it over? He goes, yeah, I do. I said, okay, you can be the treasurer, but I've been of service in a number of ways at meetings, and I'm currently running many meetings myself and sponsoring all of that, a lot of people. And so being of service has helped me feel like I was a part of the program. And, sponsorship is important. As I told you, I got that first sponsee, and today I have lots and lots of sponsees, and many of those sponsees are my very closest friends in my life. I trust them implicitly with all my money, my family, everything. So I'm a big believer in sponsorship. I have a really wonderful, loving sponsor, Dan. And I'm very, very grateful that that's a big part of my life. So spirituality, the God thing was tough on me. That's another tool of the program. The God thing was difficult. I equated the word God with religion, and I didn't have a good relationship with the idea of religion. And that doesn't discount it for anybody that's got religion. God bless you. It works for a lot of people. For me, I had a rough time with that idea and that concept. And so I was having a hard time with God. And I was sober 17 years before I was driving on the Pali, which is the cliffside in Maui, between Maalaea and the west side of Maui. And I heard a radio announcer say, if you're not sure what God is, folks, I can tell you exactly what God is. Is everybody listening out there in Radio Land? And I thought, yeah, I'm listening. And he said, God is a make-believe friend for grown-ups. And I thought to myself, I could possibly start with that kind of a God. I could probably crack that door open of faith if I just imagine a higher power that's my friend. And of course, AA says of your own understanding, but for some reason that resonated with me. And I went over to a restaurant called Penne Pasta in Lahaina, which isn't there because Lahaina's burned down, obviously. And I took out my journal and I started writing down, if I had a higher power, what would my higher power look like? I think the first thing I wrote down is he would be a little bit of a practical joker. He'd have a sense of humor. And I wrote down that he would let me burn my hand on the stove sometime so that I would learn not to put my hand on the stove. And I wrote down that he would be loving and he would be my greatest cheerleader, rooting for me all the time. And he would encourage me and he would want me to play and have fun. And he would encourage me to grow and evolve and have hobbies and help others and love myself. And I wrote down a whole thing of what this higher power would be for me. And that was the beginning of my relationship with a higher power. And it doesn't have to work that way for anyone. That's my experience. But for me, that's how I came to have spirituality. You see, I was at that bridge of reason, and I had been looking down at that shore of faith for many, many years in AA and watching people who had faith and had a God of their understanding and watch how happy they were. And remember, I wanted to be happy, joyous, and free. And I watched how happy they were having God. And I thought, it's just so sad that I can't be happy with them because God doesn't exist. And I'm so smart that I know that. So I just have to stand up here on this bridge and look down at them having fun on the beach and think, oh, poor me. I can't ever get to that, that shore of faith. They're so lucky. And so when I had that epiphany and I heard that radio announcer, I was able to walk over the bridge and get to that shore of faith. It was warm and glorious, and the water was warm, and it's just been magical. I've been on that beach ever since. So spirituality is a very important part of my life, my relationship with my higher power that I call God. And then I discovered from many of the people I asked about how to work the program in recovery, I discovered what I call my spiritual backpack, which is, the books, many of the books that I read on a daily basis. And this is a daily program for me. I want to have a daily reprieve. I want to every day be happy, joyous, and free. I want to every day be rocketed into the fourth dimension. So I have to do the work every day. And so I read my books every day, and I read them with a highlighter because I have ADD, and I will read a page and not hear anything that I'm reading because my mind will be on all kinds of other stuff. So I highlight stuff while I'm reading. I'll write something at the top of the page, or if I've written something at the top already, I'll write it on the side or the bottom that reminds me of what the page is about or something that stood out for me. And I fill my spiritual cup with recovery. And so it's overflowing by the time I'm done. Typically, I'll read, 6, 8, 10, 12 books. And it's very, very important for me. And I do it in the morning. I have my tea and I do my readings. And that's what I was told a lot of these other guys were doing. And I journal. I have a journal that I write in every day. And at the very least, I write the date, the time, and where I'm actually sitting at the moment while I'm reading. That's it. Sometimes I'm so busy, that's all I have the time to do. It was a check-in. I just checked in with myself. Sometimes I'll write, I'm too busy to journal today, but I love my life. And it's very helpful for me. Somebody recently, one of my sponsees recently asked me, do you do the writing at night that it suggests? And I said, I don't. I said, I did that for a while, but it brought up a lot of feelings for me. And sometimes it would be late at night and I feel like I need to make amends to somebody and it's too late. And then I go to bed thinking about the amends I need to make or the damage I created. And it was just too much for me. And it might work for some people. This is just my experience, Strength and Hope. It's not how you should work the program. It's just how I do work the program. So I journal on a regular basis, and I do a gratitude list on a regular basis. That's another tool of recovery for me. That's living in the attitude of gratitude. And I receive lots of gratitude lists through text messages from other people. And there's this one woman named Tonya that if she hasn't received my gratitude list in a while, like yesterday, she sent me a little text, haven't received your gratitude list in a little while. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And I write the gratitude list and I feel more grateful. And I want to let you know that I'm not perfect at any of this stuff. Sometimes I miss moments or days or some of my tools of recovery, but these are all tools of recovery I use to love my life. And, I wanted to say that pausing when agitated is a big tool for me. It's been a difficult tool to use, and I'm not perfect, but I'm 95% better than I used to be. I don't send those texts out. I'll write them sometimes, but I don't send them. I don't send the emails out when I'm upset. In fact, I try not to even open my mouth when I'm upset. I just try not to open my mouth. Sometimes that requires me to say, hang on a second, I have to use the restroom. I go in the restroom and I literally drop to my knees in the restroom and I do the serenity prayer. Because if I had opened my mouth right then, that would have not been a good thing. So pausing when agitated is very important to me. Having healthy boundaries is another tool that I use. Those boundaries keep me safe. They let me know, don't run into the street. That's dangerous. And in real life, that means don't be around toxic people. Or don't engage in toxic behavior like gossiping. Step away from it. My boundaries are for me. They're not necessarily set by me so that other people could acknowledge and respect my boundaries, because I have no power over people, places, and things and situations. And the truth of the matter is, if I have to set a boundary with somebody, that probably means they're violating my boundary already. And there's a good chance they're going to continue to violate my boundary. But what it is for me is to let them know, I'm uncomfortable when you spit in my face. You can continue to spit in my face, but I need to let you know that I won't be able to come over and visit you anymore if you do that. And then I don't visit them anymore if they spit in my face again. That's it. I'm uncomfortable when you yell at me. And even though we're married, I need to let you know that if you yell at me again, I'm going to leave and take the dog for a walk. Might not leave the relationship, but I'm going to leave the house for a moment. I set boundaries to keep me safe. And I pray. I've got the higher power, so I get to pray. I get to pray all the time. I get to put anything that I'm uncomfortable with on a God shelf. That wall over there at the very top, you can't see it because it's invisible, but there's a shelf up there, and I can put anything I want on that shelf. That's my God shelf. And that shelf can run around a palm tree. That shelf can be sitting on a cloud. That shelf can be anywhere I'm at, and I can just surrender the thing that I'm uncomfortable with, because I don't want to recycle it anymore. And the journal is a powerful tool for me to write things out that I don't want to recycle anymore. Because then I know I can refer to the journal and it's there. I don't have to keep thinking about something that I have no power over. I can put it on the God shelf. I do affirmations every morning. I open myself up to abundance, God, abundance of finance and romance and love and happiness and joy, creativity, silliness, fun, service, everything that you want from me, God, all the good, wonderful stuff. I am open to everything today, God. I want to get out of your way and allow you to pour it into my life. I love doing affirmations. I started meditating not that long ago, to be honest. It was difficult for me. The idea of being still and not doing anything seemed insane to me. I'm a very busy man with lots of very important things to do. At the very least, I can do some laundry or dishes. You want me to sit here for 5 minutes or 10 or 20? That's insane. But I was in Florida for one of my daughter's softball games, and a sponsor of mine said, hey, I'm doing this 21-day Deepak Oprah meditation thing. You want to join me? And I thought, the meditation thing of doing nothing. That sounds horrible. He says, well, let's just give it a shot, and I'm like, I don't want to listen to any of these Oprah Deepak people. He said, well, I'm going to try it. You don't have to. And I thought, well, I'm sitting here by the pool. She has a day with no softball. I guess I could download this app and listen to this thing, whatever. I listened to it and I was like shocked. I thought it was pretty good, It's like, I'm like, if this is meditation, it's not that bad. Today I listened to a meditation I've been listening to for years and years and years. It's a Deepak Chopra meditation, Overcoming Obstacles and Frustrations. And the reason I listen to it is because I like the idea of overcoming obstacles and frustrations because they happen every day. And I would like to master this art. And he talks about this mantra of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And, my wife had a bad situation with her back. And we had a yoga instructor come over and was helping her. And I said, hey, I like the idea of stretching or doing yoga, but I'm a very, very busy man. And I have a lot of things to do. So I don't have time to go to a yoga class or anything like that. But is there something I could do for 5 minutes every day that would help me? And she said, absolutely. Let me teach you these 5 poses that you could do every day. And you can do them in your bed before you get out of bed. In fact, because you're very old, that would be a good idea. And I'm like, I'm not old. She said, well, I don't mean you're just an older guy, And I'm like, I'm the old guy now. And she said, well, just listen to me. She had me do these 5 exercises. And I decided to incorporate the exercises, because I'm a very busy man, with the Deepak meditation. I could do them at the same time. It's a twofer, right? And I listen. I turn on that meditation every morning while I'm waking up. After I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do before I open my eyes is I kiss my fingers and I throw them in the air and I say, thank you, God. And I think I didn't have a stroke or a heart attack last night. It's a beautiful thing. I'm sober and I'm alive today. Thank you, God. And then I reach over and I turn on my recorded meditation and I start doing my yoga and I start my day like that. And so that's a very big part of my life as well, that meditation. And I do what's called mirror work. And that is that after I do my meditation and after I get on my knees and I thank my angels, my family members and my loved ones that have passed for keeping us safe. And then I get up and I do my affirmations and I walk into the bathroom. Before I use the restroom, I see myself in the mirror and I go, oh, good morning, James. Good morning. Welcome to life again. I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm so grateful that you're you. I'm so grateful to be me. And I look down at a little picture of Jamie boy. This is a picture of Jamie boy when I was a little boy. And I say, good morning, little Jamie. Good morning. It's good to see you this morning. I love you. I love you so much. And we're going to do some fun things today, Jamie. We're going to go to the beach. We're going to play guitar. We're going to have some fun. And I look at myself and I go, I'm so proud of the man you're becoming. I'm so proud that you're still willing to evolve more and be a better version of yourself today than you were yesterday. I'm so proud of who you are. I'm so lucky to be you. I'm so lucky to be you, little Jamie boy. Isn't it amazing that we're the same person? It's really cool. So I do my mirror work in the morning. I give myself all the love and the nurturing that I used to always need from other people, but I never got it exactly the way I wanted. Today, I get it exactly the way I want to be loved and nurtured. I get it every morning from myself. So anything I get from anybody else, it's icing. And another tool that I use is recalibrating my expectations. One of the things that really tripped me up is that I realized I have a lot of expectations about people, places, things, and situations, about life, about myself. I was hard on myself because I expected me to be better and stronger and richer and maybe more handsome and maybe in better shape, and have more things. I had lots of expectations. I wouldn't lose this. I wouldn't get sick. I wouldn't have they wouldn't do that. If they loved me, I wouldn't, and I needed to recalibrate those expectations. And I needed to get in a place of gratitude rather than expectation. And I needed to be aware of my expectations. Awareness is, the meditation I do in the morning, the foundational element behind his mantra and everything is increase your awareness. And your obstacles will turn into opportunities. Be more aware. And do it through love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And so awareness is so important. And by recalibrating my expectations and being aware of those expectations, I can change everything. Most of my pain and suffering is a result of what's going on between my 2 ears. It's not what's going on outside of me. It's not even because I got sick or injured or blah, 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 blah. That's all an opportunity for my disease to throw a pity party for myself, to get the little pity rattle, the little pity hat, the little pity blower. Oh, I get appendicitis. Oh, you have a bad headache. Oh, my back is sore. My wife, we got divorced. I have no money. There's a million reasons I could be upset. But I want to be happy, joyous, and free. I can flick all that stuff off. I want to love my life. I don't need to evaluate why something is bad or why I didn't get something that I wanted or lost something I had. I can just focus back on gratitude. So, and that in part of that is about letting go of negativity. I recently heard somebody share that there was a study done, and it was a question of, do you get to enjoy life and be more happy when you focus on the positive or when you let go of the negative? And what he said is it was determined that letting go of negativity really was the way to be happy. Letting go of negativity. You automatically have lots of stuff to be happy about, and there's wonderful things to enjoy in life. You let go of the negativity and you're left with all the good stuff. So letting go of negativity. And that part of that is being aware of that you're in negativity. Just a few more tools. Halting, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. That's about awareness, recognizing that and taking care of myself physically, spiritually, emotionally. Surrendering, putting it on the God shelf. Whenever something comes up that I'm uncomfortable with, recognizing I'm uncomfortable, I can use one of my tools of recovery and get comfortable again. I don't have to fix it or control it to be comfortable. I don't have to change it. I can just allow it to be and then get back into my tools of recovery, and I can love my life again if I want to. Or I can get the rattle out and the hat and the blower. That's my choice. And so that brings me to humility, recognizing that, even though I'm 42 years sober and I've been in AA for 35 years and, I'm a member of Al-Anon and all these other programs, and, that I'm just almost at the top of the very first mountain of a ginormous range of mountains of spirituality that I get to explore. I am no better than anybody else in recovery or sobriety. I am not a bleeding deacon. I am not a bleeding deacon. I don't have all the answers. And what works for me might not work for you. And that's okay, because we're all individuals. There might be a few tools that work for you. There might be no tools that work for you. But these are my tools. And the purpose of life, this is important. I was probably 25 years sober, and my sponsor said to me, well, what's your purpose in life? And I said, well, I have multiple purposes in life, and, being a daddy, being a provider, making money, being, my sobriety, he said, well, it talks about in the big book, the purpose is to be, to stay sober and be of maximum service to others. And I said, okay. And he said, and the cool thing about that is that if you do those two things, you stayed sober and you help somebody else out, when you get into bed at the end of the evening, you're a success. You've achieved your purpose in life. Forget about money, forget about property and prestige, family, kids, relationship, forget about all that stuff. You've achieved your purpose in life. You stay sober and you are of service to somebody. Congratulations. And that was incredible, because that means that every day I get into bed, I've achieved the purpose of my life. And all of those tools combined allow me to love life. I yell out, I love my life all the time. My kids grew up with hearing me yell, I love my life, over and over again. I don't have any tattoos. I have nothing against tattoos. My brother is covered in tattoos. A lot of my friends have tattoos. I just don't have any tattoos. And, I told my kids, I said, you can't get into tattoo until you're 18 years old. If you're in my house, you're not old enough to make that decision. My daughter came home, I think she was 17 years old, and she said, Daddy, I got a tattoo. And I was like, I could feel my blood start to boil. I could feel my uncomfortableness come up. I was aware that I was suddenly going from happiness and life loving to unhappiness and not loving my life, and she said, but before you get mad, can I show it to you? And I was like, I don't even want to see it. And she lifted up her shirt, and here was this little tattoo with these words, I love my life. Very difficult to get upset. Very difficult. My son said to me, I was driving down from Santa Barbara to Oxnard. He's a helicopter pilot, and he said I was having a real rough day, and I decided, Dad, I would just yell out, I love my life over and over again. And he said, and I got to tell you something, Dad. how I felt completely changed. I went from being unhappy to feeling good. So thank you for that. So I'm grateful that I'm a life lover today and that I use these tools of recovery to love my life. And I hope that something I've said today has helped one of you out. Thank you so much for allowing me to be of service and to share today. I love my life. I'm James.
My name is B, and I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. Thank you so much, James, for a fantastic message. And we have a couple of hands up, and I just want to reiterate that this is the Q&A session. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and come in with a question for James. So, Christine, do you have a question for James?
Yes, hi, my name is Christine. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. I just want to thank James so much for amazing share. And, I wanted to ask him, at the point that he was on the beach, the point that you was at the beach, is that where you had your spiritual awakening when you said you did not believe in God?
I would call that my spiritual awakening. Yes, I would call that my spiritual awakening. That moment at the beach was related to the moment of me hearing it on the radio, that I could create my vision of a higher power, and then writing it down, and then realizing I'm a God guy now. I suddenly went from not being a God guy to being a God guy. I'm in the God zone. I made it into the God zone. Like, I've been trying to get in the God zone for this whole time. I've made it into the God zone, and I'm a God guy. And if somebody thinks that, I'm a weirdo because I'm a God guy, that's okay, because I got this seat and I'm not giving it up.
Thank you, Christine, for that question. And thank you, James. And Donna, please come in with your question.
Hey, James. I'm a God girl, so I get it. Thank you so much. I love the fact that you talked about you were in so much pain. And it's interesting, we can be in so much pain and still rely on the God of reason, still think we can think. And I too did an exercise where I went back to young Donna and told her how much she was loved and how lovable she is. My question to you, in the big book, it talks a lot about what we need to do this, to bring to this deal with God is willingness, open-mindedness, and honesty. My question, how much does humility play in this deal?
Humility is a very interesting concept. I've read a lot about humility in recovery. And, when I think of the opposite of humility, I think of ego, righteousness, know-it-allism, playing God myself. And, some of that happened as a child. I always wanted to be a daddy because I wanted to be God. My father was like God. He was in control of all the kids. I come from a big family, and I wanted to be in control. And when you're a parent, you are in control, or it's at least the illusion of control. You are responsible for making sure the kid doesn't run out in the street and things like that. So it gets very confusing. We have a responsibility, certainly for ourselves, what's in our own hula hoop. And when we're a parent, we have responsibilities for our children. When we're a manager or an owner of a company, we're responsible for employees. So at the same time, humility is that idea of don't look down at anybody unless you're reaching your hand down to help them up. Just because they're my son, my daughter, my employee, it doesn't mean I'm better than them. It doesn't mean I'm smarter than them. I may have a little more knowledge and be able to help them, but it's important for me when I'm talking to my child, or at this point I have a grandson that's 6 months old, I get down to his level. Oftentimes I get below his level. He really enjoys when I'm below his level. he's more comfortable and more happy when I'm down there. I don't want to be a big scary guy, or I don't want to be a sponsor that's standing on a chair looking down at a sponsee. I want to be at eye level. So that's the type of humility I practice today.
Thank you, Donna, for a great question and for a great answer, James. Kay, can you turn your camera on, please, so I can unmute you? There we go. Please come in with your question.
Hi, thank you so much for that beautiful share. I got so much out of it. I feel you, and I feel regarding the AD, when you said ADD, I just want to know, did you have a feeling that you were self-medicating that ADD? And have you got any tips for being an addict with attention deficit, neurological things going on?
Yeah, let me answer that question about ADD. It's interesting. I recently was sent a TikTok video of a bunch of young boys that were running around a yard, digging, throwing, jumping, hitting, crazy behavior. And this doctor was saying they treat this behavior as ADD. But this is normal behavior for children. And then I reflected on the fact that most people I know have driven a car and texted at the same time, multitasking. And there's a lot of people now that watch TV and they're on their phone at the same time. They're doing all these things. So I would imagine that 98% of the people on the planet have ADD. They're doing all these things at the same time. And so when I use that phrase, it just means that my mind wants to travel in a lot of different directions at the same moment. I have trouble focusing and listening. And so I discovered very early on that if I read a book and I'm not doing something like this, underlining, highlighting, writing, then I don't absorb the information the same way I do as when I'm, writing out, I'm highlighting the attitude of gratitude. And then I'm writing the words like live in the A of G, and now my mind is now focused on gratitude instead of the fact that I need to stop by the gas station before I head to the other side because I just remembered that I'm running low on gas, and I make sure that I put some stuff in the truck because I want to go to the dump. And this is all going on while I'm reading. It's very difficult for me to be thinking about that when I'm highlighting and writing. So that's kind of what I meant.
Thank you, Kay, for that question, and James for that answer. And we have a question from the chat. What is your most underutilized tool in sobriety?
I would say that shifts from year to year. I've had periods of time when I was very diligent about my gratitude list every single day. And then I've had period of times like now when Tonya has to remind me to do a gratitude list. I've had years of journaling consistently every day and absolutely making sure that if I look back at my journal, you could track every day I was doing an entry. And then I've had times in my life when I've gone a week or two without journaling. And the tendency was to then beat myself up because I wasn't being consistent. It's difficult to pinpoint it. I guess it just vacillates. I have so many tools of recovery that I get to choose from that I will say it would probably be common for me not to get to every single tool every single day. But that's okay. That's okay.
Cool. Thank you. And Kim, please come in with your question.
Kim, I'm an alcoholic, and I just want to say, too, that I came in late. I apologize. I honestly, have a memory issue and I did forget until the fact that oh my goodness. So I hurried up and got on, and I was so grateful that to hear you share. I want to read this to you because I sent it to the ABS by accident, and I cannot copy it and paste it. So, but I wrote to you, thank you, James. That was a beautiful share that truly told me and everyone how healing action is, and reading the big book and doing those steps. That's a weird. That was a beautiful share, and it truly told me and everyone how healing the action is of reading the big book and doing those steps. What a miracle you are. Thanks again. So I could not copy and paste it to everyone, but I did read you. I did text you in chat. I also want to tell you that when you spoke about how you go after you wake up and you go in the bathroom, after you do your prayers and whatnot, and then you go and you speak to your child, your inner child, little James, that really made me cry, because that's what I need to do, I think, because I was crying so much. But that was just so beautiful. And also, I wanted to ask you, do you do meetings in Honolulu, Hawaii? Like, do you know about the Hawaii Ohana AA meeting or any other meetings of that nature? And can I please have your number or email address? I would love to be able to be in touch and to do a meeting in Maui, Hawaii also. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
I'm on Maui, not Honolulu, but I do some Zoom meetings that are out here. I attend different meetings. I'm happy to share those with you. And I appreciate all of the kind, loving words that you said about my share. So thank you very much.
Thank you, James. And Janae, do you have a question for James? Please come in.
Yes, I do. Thank you. My name is Janae, and I'm an alcoholic and addict. James, thank you very much for your share. Being new to recovery, it's very helpful to have these tools to keep in mind, and I was taking notes to revert back to them. My question is, you mentioned having boundaries and staying away from toxic people so that we're not triggered, don't have things that will bother us. But then there's also humility. So I wanted to know how you balance that, especially, for example, in a family situation where we have family members that might be pushing our buttons, so to speak, and, giving their opinions on our life when it's not asked for. Do we engage? Do we keep away from it? Do we respond lovingly? So I wanted to just know how you balance boundaries and humility.
That's a great question. First of all, I want to start off by saying I haven't met anybody in my life that likes the word no, including me. So in order for me to set healthy boundaries, which is loving myself, I have to be willing to say no, and that means I have to be willing to disappoint some people. Part of that process has come from doing mirror work and learning to love myself. I didn't really understand that I was even allowed to love me first. I thought I was supposed to love everybody else first. Part of the reason that I was so dedicated to loving everyone else first is I wanted them to love me. Why? Because I didn't really love myself. So once you learn to love yourself by doing the mirror work, suddenly I was able to put myself first. And that meant setting healthy boundaries. As I said before, when I was speaking, the boundaries are for me to know I'm not comfortable in this situation. You may continue to give me your unsolicited opinion. You may continue to berate me or be mean to me or to engage in dysfunctional behavior. My responsibility to myself, because I love myself, is to detach with love. That means I need to step out of the room. And at one point I had somebody that was berating me on the telephone, on the mobile phone, and said to me, I swear to God, James, if you hang up this phone, I'm going to blah, 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 and it was a threat. for me not to hang up the phone and have to continue to accept the abuse. So I learned that a white lie in this situation would be okay. So the next time they called me and started with me, I said, hello, hello, hello. Oh, AT&T, hello, darn it, click, turn off my phone. That person started saying, you're really having bad service out there in Maui, aren't you? And I said, oh yeah, it's terrible out here. I need to take care of myself first. That detaching is my responsibility. Getting you to stop your behavior, I have no control over that. Stepping away, I do have control over that. And eventually I found that if you step away often enough, people tend not to want to do that anymore because they don't want you stepping away.
Thank you, Jenny, for that question and for that answers, James. And Sarah is going to be our last question for the day. Please come in with your question, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I live in New York from France. Well, today, first, thank you so much, James. Wow, I learned so much. But my first question, I'm Sarah, an alcoholic, and today is my 30 days. And thank you. And first, I hope you have a recording. I can get it because I want to take more notes. And there is any way we can get the recording? To record about what you say?
They have it in the chat.
Yeah,
from what
it's in the chat. Yeah, there's a link in the chat.
Oh, great. Thank you. Second question. I'm sorry to ask you that, but like you're saying, everything you're doing every day, I'm just 30 days sober, and between the meetings, sponsor twice a week, and go, like, I have also to learn the Blue Book by myself, and I have, and praying and everything, and I have to work. Like, it's like, I don't stop 1 second. And you think that you're still working, and you do so much, like yoga, meditation, journal, sponsor. I say, how physically, like, we have only 24 hours per day, and you have to sleep. So, and you have a life. So how do you manage everything? Because for me, it seems overwhelming.
That's a good question. Well, as I told you before, I'm a very, very busy man with lots of things to do. So I'm very focused on keeping things compact and short because of my lifestyle. Many of the tools of recovery to love life are things like, recalibrating my expectations or letting go of negativity. That's not an activity that I spend a certain amount of time each day. That's just when they come up. But the things like my meditation, that's 5 minutes, my meditation and my yoga practice. And so between my whole morning ritual of my mirror work and my affirmations and everything, we're talking about 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes of my morning. And then my journaling and my reading, that's maybe a half an hour each day, 45 minutes at the most. And yes, I do get to a meeting every day because I love my meetings. Sometimes I get to more if I have time. And I have sponsees, and I talk to them while I'm, doing some work. I might be out in my garden. I might be driving somewhere. I'll catch up with my sponsor, my sponsees. So I managed to fit it all in without a problem. And I think that most people can do it too if they're don't allow themselves to drift off into hours of journaling or hours of reading. Yes. So.
Thank you for that question, Sarah. And thank you, James. And with that, I want to thank everybody that took part in the Q&A. And it's back over to you, Rasa.
Thank you, B.